Elyon is an upcoming buy-to-play MMORPG with an action combat system made by Bluehole, the makers of Tera, and published by Kakao Games, most likely in Q4 2021 from what I've been led to believe. I was invited to play the closed beta during the weekend just past and managed to get in around 8 hours of gameplay before I ran out of time. So in today's video I'll tell you all I know about the game so far and then talk about my own experience. We'll cover the playable classes, the world, the gameplay loop and a few areas where I think the game could be improved. I'll also speculate on where I think this might be going in the future. Originally the game was called Ascent Infinite Realm, but from what I understand it really didn't do well in its first iteration, so the devs went back to the drawing board. A year later the game was renamed to Elyon and came with a completely revamped combat system. It's got some character mechanics which I felt made the game pretty unique, and I'll come to that shortly. The strange thing for me was that the game felt like a mix of a lot of other MMOs I've played in the past. This could be really good or really bad depending on how well the game is received by you guys. It could potentially appeal to a lot of people because of this, or it could go the other way and fall flat because of the lack of focus. Personally for me I like the mix, but we'll get to that. It seems to be a game that places itself between worlds, which is ironic because that also seems to be the basis for much of the story. To elaborate on this, Elyon is set in a world which seems to me a cross between fantasy and steampunk, and the story will take you back and forth between the two. It has a good mix of both PvE and PvP activities, but doesn't seem to have a complete focus on one or the other. In terms of the gameplay, again it seems to sit between other MMOs in terms of how it feels. The combat reminded me of a cross between World of Warcraft or Final Fantasy Online and Black Desert Online, and yeah, I know those two are actually polar opposites in terms of the gameplay experience, but the combat system is more action based than something like WoW, and less action based than something like Black Desert, sitting somewhere in the middle. We'll come to the combat in more depth later on. The classes you can play are relatively limited, offering only 5 options at base level. These are the Warlord, Elementalist, Mystic, Assassin or Gunner. However, despite the limitation on your initial pick, there is a system as you begin to level up to make your character your own and choose a number of branching paths, which will give you a lot of control to build a subclass as you level. In terms of race, first of all there is no gender lock, which is good. You can pick from 4 races: human, elf, orc or Ain. The human, elf and orc each have male and female options, and it appears that the Ain is gender neutral. The character customization is, as you might expect from a Korean based game, incredibly detailed, allowing you to map out exactly how you want your character to look, in terms of facial features, body style, voice, etc. There are sliders which will let you move individual elements of the face around, such as eyebrows or cheekbones. As always, when I'm given this level of detail to play around with, I spend a long time trying to get it right, and eventually completely screwed it up. Anyway, let's move on. When you start out the game you'll have a few small cutscenes to introduce you to the story, and you'll jump straight into the combat after that. You'll begin with just a couple of abilities as you might expect, and very quickly find yourself leveling and unlocking new abilities. Initially it all feels very linear. In your first hour or so of gameplay, the abilities you unlock will all be on a set path, which give you no real freedoms to customise, but as you begin to progress past what I consider to be the tutorial section of the game, you will unlock new mechanics as you continue to progress. The same goes for the armour sets and equipment. As you enter the new zone after the starting area, this is where things, to me at least, got interesting. You'll unlock a glider system which is really helpful when traversing the world, but only really helps if you can get to a high point on the map. You'll unlock your first mount, which is surprisingly slow, but I expect you'll be able to get better versions of this toward the end game. You'll also continue to unlock more and more abilities, armour and weapons. It's a nice balance actually. I never felt overloaded with abilities, which has been the case in some MMOs I've played. Where things get interesting is when the skill attributes and runestone system unlocks for you. The skill attributes allow you to select abilities you have unlocked and upgrade them with added effects. Like for example, I picked the shield bash ability to upgrade at one point during a challenging fight. It allowed me to tie together an offensive ability and make it automatically trigger one of my defensive abilities, while also boosting the damage output. My shield bash now automatically triggers the shield block ability while it is active, which I found really useful given that it was a 3-hit ability on a pretty short cooldown. Each ability has 4 options you can select to customise it, and you are limited to only being able to augment some of your abilities, and this is where you'll find yourself heading into subclass territory. No doubt when the game is fully released there will be meta options for you to choose in different roles, but at face value it gives you a lot of freedom to experiment with your character. On top of that there is the rune system. You can begin to slot different runes in your armour pieces. The runes have a number of functions. They will raise your overall item level and they can be upgraded or replaced as you progress through the game. The runes come in a number of different flavours too, including Assault, Control, Fate, Support, Protection and Awakening. The runes also give you access to another skill selection option, which are more like general passives you can pick from. For example, I went down the assault line and picked Ruthless, which is a flat 8% damage for 8 seconds after defeating an enemy, and Amplify, which buffed a few of my abilities' critical hit chance. What I liked about this system is the freedom it gave me to play around with different playstyles without having to make sweeping changes to my character. However, this is where I suspect the game might become quite grindy in the future. Having to upgrade runes, which is referred to as polishing them, I suspect will take a lot of time depending on how high the item level is you need to get to. It also introduces the risk of the game becoming a pay to win, which at the moment is uncertain, but I think a lot of people have this concern, so for now we'll have to wait and see. In terms of the gameplay loop, it's what you would expect from most MMOs. You have your linear story missions to complete and quest hubs. One thing I liked is that it seems to have been streamlined to an extent. The story quest will see you running back and forth talking to NPCs. Again, this is pretty familiar territory, but the game does a good job of explaining all the mechanics and the upgrade systems well during this process. The element I feel has been streamlined is the non-story questing. Each area has a quest clerk or clerk, never sure how to pronounce that. These NPCs will give you a bunch of quests for that region, so you don't need to dash around between 10 different NPCs to pick up your basic quest. Obviously the quests involve killing X number of enemies or collecting X number of items from dead enemies, but as you go ahead and do this, you'll pick up the items you need automatically without needing to stop and actually click to collect things. If the quests don't have a follow-up or are not part of a story, then the quest will auto complete for you and you'll be given your reward XP and the items without needing to return to the quest giver. So while the game and the leveling process is fairly standard from an MMO point of view, to me at least it felt fairly smooth with limited downtime between the action. There are single player dungeons which I enjoyed. The combat out in the open world isn't exactly challenging for the most part, but the dungeon boss was tricky and he even managed to kill me once and forced me to actually think about the skills I wanted to prioritise. There are open world bosses which you'll need to manually activate in order to start the fight. You will definitely need a group for these bosses. I did attempt one of these and ended up getting killed a lot trying to down him. The population during the beta was pretty limited, so getting a group together wasn't an easy task. On that note, there is a system to find a group. From what I've seen, you can set up a group manually and make it public so that people can join for whatever activity you want to do. Should work well in theory as long as the population is there. There are of course group dungeons too, both normal and time attack, which I assume is a challenge mode. At this point they seemed limited to single player dungeons or 5 player. There is also a realm war or a faction war system which seems to be on a scheduled timer and will allow you to jump straight into some PvP madness. As things stand right now, you can participate in the realm war once per week and you have a number of times available to attend. Each realm war will last for around 40 minutes. Overall, I enjoyed my time on Elyon. I enjoyed the streamlined leveling process and the freedom to play around with customising my character. The combat, for me at least, was a good mix of traditional MMO style combat, but with just a little action to make it feel interesting and impactful. To make a full review of the game I would need a lot more time, but in terms of first impressions I would definitely be interested in spending some more time in the game when the option is available. It seemed like a fun MMO to jump into as a casual player. There also looks to be enough there of interest for the hardcore players, but there is definitely the risk of some pay to win elements involved at some point down the line. With the game being a buy to play, my hope is that this will be fair and balanced if it is a factor, but time will tell on that front. I hope you found this useful. Leave me a like and comment if you don't mind, sub if you're new, and I'll wrap it up there. Thank you for watching, take care, stay safe, bye bye now.